Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. It is sad that I have to make these kind of videos, and this is talking about an executive order Trump signed again that he should have never signed. This executive order should have never been even in the conversation. Why? Because what he is banning shouldn't have been there in the first place. That is my opinion, and I would go with my values as a free American, if such a thing exists. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the transgenders. I have nothing against people pretending to be whatever they want to pretend to be. I have a problem with two things. One, that little thing to be imposed on me, or the government hurting me from not agreeing with that, whatever it is. These are the only two things. They can pretend how much they want. I don't want them to go further than that because that's not based on reality. What am I talking about? Here is what Trump signed today. According to Associated Press, Trump signs executive order intended to bar transgender athletes from girls' and women's sports. You see what's interesting? That they don't ban transgender boys from competing in the men's sports. It's always transgender men competing into girls' or women's sports. Why do you think it's so? I will explain. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday intended to ban transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports, not participating in men's or boys' sports. The order, titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, why not keeping women out of men's sports, gives federal agencies wide latitude to ensure entities that receive federal funding abide by Title IX in alignment with the Trump administration's view, which interprets, quote-unquote, sex as the gender someone was assigned at birth. So Trump administration's view interpret it like that. Okay? It's just, see, already you know that Associated Press is fighting the words to fight normality. What is normality? Well, you know, look in the animal reign. Always, when you want to kind of see, to a certain extent, what is nature, what is natural, just look in the animal reign. And you won't see two lions fucking one another, or two lionesses doing anything like this. You don't see this kind of things. And if you see something like this is not the norm. So that means it's outside of the norm, which means is perversion of the norm. The word perversion is not meant to hurt anybody's feelings because it's not about, anything that's out of the norm is a perversion. It's out of normality of the norm. Dictionaries are still available, and it's not illegal yet to look at the definitions. So here, with this executive order, I'm quoting, "War on women's sports is over," Trump said at a signing ceremony in the East Room that included lawmakers and female athletes who have come out in support of a ban, including former collective swimmer Riley Gaines. Now, personal note, the only thing is allowing transgender men, identifying themselves as women, participating in women's sports because they will probably win. Why? For physiological reasons, that's obvious. From natural reasons, overwhelmingly, most of the time. You don't see the other way around. Like, for instance, you don't see, let's say, Brittany Griner, the girl, a lesbian woman. I don't think she gets offended if I call her by her identification. She would let you know that she's part of the LGBTQ plus minus and so on. Why doesn't she go to the regular NBA? Why she goes to women's NBA? Because she would be a, remember, it was that crazy guy John McEnroe, the crazy tennis player, all right? Remember when he was pushed into trying to apologize, to make him apologize, when he said, well, I think he said Djokovic is the, I think it was about Djokovic. He is the GOAT, the great player of all time. And then the female, I think it was CBS or CNN, she said, what about Serena Williams? Isn't she the GOAT? And he said, man, no, she's maybe the greatest women's player of all time. And the baboon, whatever she was over there from CBS, or I have her in my memory, I see her over there. She said, what do you mean? Like she was offended. What do you mean? And he said, well, McEnroe continued. He said, you can find a video on YouTube. He said, well, if you take Serena Williams, when Serena Williams was the best, and she was the best at one point for a long time, actually, whenever she was coming back, she was beating everybody. But hey, what can you do? When you're prescribed certain things and you got waivers, you're going to beat everybody. Oh, they help you, all right? Otherwise, they would not be banned. Well, it didn't enhance her abilities. Then why don't you allow everybody to take it? All right. So, like Simone Biles as well, if I remember correctly. She has ADHD and she has medication. They are banned, but through a waiver, she's allowed to. But hey, that's not good. I mean, if it doesn't necessarily enhance your performance, then if it doesn't necessarily, why don't you let everybody take it? Okay, so let's go back to Serena. So McEnroe said, if Serena would participate, as good as she is, in the men's, tennis, she wouldn't be in the first 200. Oy vey. And then everybody, he should apologize. Said, no, that's true. Serena Williams and Venus Williams, both of them played in the same day, the number 197 on the ATP ranks in the men's, and he beat them both like 6-0 and 6-1 or 6-0, 6-0 in the same day, one after another. So the sisters were beaten by the 197th, I think it was. So he said, no, that's the reality. Now, if Serena, which was the best and should be the GOAT, did not beat the 197th and the man, that tells you something, doesn't it? And that could be valid for many other things, in gymnastics, in athletics, in track and field, in football. Remember, there were some, I think it was the Australian or the American football team lost national team. There was one equal pay. Remember the Americans, they want equal pay. For what exactly? They played in high school team, boys high school team, and they lost with about like 11-3 or 7-1 or something like this. So the high school boys, that's below the age of 18, beat the shit of the American, I think it was Australian, women soccer national team. So now you know why women would not, transgender women pretending to be men or identify as men, don't go and play. It's only the other way around. That tells you that's a difference in certain abilities. Nevertheless, beyond that, as I said, it's the same thing with the homosexuals and the lesbians. Man, you can all your holes if you want. You can do all your eyes if you want, whatever you want to do over there. But there are limitations. It's not the same thing because we're going to extrapolate that. As I said many times, to many other things. I mean, some people, crazy as I know, could make, this argument. Well, there is a consensual sex between two adults. All right, I'm okay with that. Consensual between two adults, I'm okay with it. But then, why do we have incest? Emil, there's going to be the offspring. We can solve that. We can make a little amendments to allowing them to, like that, by not being allowed to have kids or something. I mean, amendments you can always make. And then little by little, they can get married and so on. And so on, we can extrapolate it to other things. Like, I don't know, a woman and a horse, or a man and a mare, or something like this. Now, I know people will find that crazy, but that's how I find that thing crazy, that these guys thought is normality. My point is this: if someone feels insulted by my statements or by my values, and we have an arbiter, did that arbiter take into consideration my feelings or only those feelings? Unless you tell me that's right and what I say is wrong, which I invite you to have a stroll in nature once in a while, then that's a different story. When you promote someone's rights and you infringe on my rights, now we have a problem. Remember, every time when this guy said, well, she felt offended because you said so, or you said that. Well, anybody cares about my feelings, that I felt offended because that person wants me to call him or call her by this pronoun or something like that? Nobody cared. How about me? Why don't I matter? And besides, I'm going to give you an example. I don't think this video will fly on YouTube, but I will make it nevertheless. When you go to a store, at least in the United States of America, in the civilized world, you have the handicap ramps. I'm okay with that. And you have the handicap spots. That's a privilege that the rest of, they say, what, we are good. We are good. We're going to allow this to happen because we care. I dare you to park on those spots if they're open and nothing else is open in the parking lot. What do you think will happen? You immediately were going to find some people to notify you, and you get in big trouble for a, how do you call that, privilege. There's privilege. Somehow that's a right. I think it's a privilege given by the whole society to a special group because some people felt sorry about that. That's the whole, it's not a right, it's a privilege that the whole society gave to a certain group. Now you dare to park on those parking spots as the one who provided the privilege or agreed with, or you were never asked anyway. So here with this transgender thing, and the same thing with the other guys, from little let leave, don't leave me alone, don't ask, don't tell, well, we all like this, they got to marriage, they got to adopting children, they got to this. Now if you don't clap enthusiastically enough during the Pride Month, you're considered a bigot, an anti-this. But this is a reaction to me. So why shouldn't I call it anti-heterosexual? Why anti-gay? Why not anti-heterosexual by definition? You sprang out of the nature norm. So I disagree with these guys being allowed to compete in women's sports, because we're going to have men, and we have the feminists who keep their mouth shut on this one. They should say, wait a second, we fought for equality and so on, but now we're going to have the men who identify as getting all the spots in sports, in women's sports. I know that if my children are girls, they will lose as soon as the boys will be allowed to participate in their sports. They will lose. I can't think of a particular sport that girls, children, or women will win in a direct confrontation. Physical sports, with a guy like this. Remember that guy? They're talking about the swimmer. I was familiar with that issue. A college swimmer guy decided to identify as, he was not the best in the men's swimming. He identified as a woman. And then he participated and broke some records, and he was the first. And you see women around him applauding because they lost. And they knew exactly what's going on over there. I think that's not right. And this thing should not have ever happened, banning or barring something like this should not have been in the issue. You want to wear that, you want to do that, you want to cut them, you want to input something, fine by me. I shouldn't be forced to pay for it though, and I shouldn't be forced to accept it as that. And if I don't, I should be penalized for that. Now this is, how do you call that? Psychosis. This is general psychosis, where people beat you in the head with something that it's too obvious. The emperor has no clothes, and people were afraid to say it. And now this guy comes over and says, wait a second, what are we doing here? And we have people who really think I really think that there will be gangs going around and looking for them just to hurt them. Probably there's some crazies out there that probably do bad stuff, but see, you have to be, as that ancient Roman proverb or saying is, media aura est. That is, the middle way is the best. No extremes, most of the time. Because without extremes, you're not going to be able to push the boundaries. You're not going to have people who risk their lives in, I don't know, being explorers or trying to find certain things. That's extreme. And that's how we push certain things ahead. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.